Imagine being expected to produce an heir to secure an entire kingdom's future. But instead of stopping at one child, you give birth to over 20. What if I told you that some queens in history turned royal motherhood into an almost supernatural feat of human endurance? These women didn't just rule kingdoms, they populated them, one birth at a time, often at the cost of their own lives. Today, we're uncovering the heartbreaking, unbelievable, and sometimes truly shocking stories of the most fertile queens in history. From ancient Egypt to medieval Europe, these royal women transformed their bodies into instruments of political power, bearing child after child in an era when each pregnancy could be their last. By the time we reach number 1, you'll be stunned by just how far the human body can be pushed in service of a crown. Throughout history, a queen's worth was often measured not by her wisdom or leadership, but by her ability to produce heirs. In an age before modern medicine, when childbirth claimed the lives of countless women, these royal mothers defied the odds again and again. Their stories reveal the brutal reality behind palace walls, where royal wombs became battlegrounds for dynastic survival. Queen Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, 1744 to 1818, starting off at number 7. We have Queen Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, who gave birth to an astounding 15 children with King George III of Britain. But here's what makes her story particularly remarkable. She managed this feat while dealing with her husband's increasingly severe mental illness episodes. Charlotte married George III in 1761, sight unseen, in an arranged marriage that would become one of the most prolific royal unions in British history. Over the span of 21 years, from 1762 to 1783, she was almost constantly pregnant or recovering from childbirth. The Queen endured pregnancy after pregnancy in an era when royal births were public spectacles, with courtiers and officials required to witness the delivery to ensure legitimacy. What's truly staggering is the physical toll this took. Charlotte spent nearly 2 decades of her life either pregnant or nursing, her body never fully recovering between pregnancies. She gave birth to the future George IV, William IV, and 13 other children. With only 2 dying in infancy, remarkable survival rate for the 18th century. Yet as her husband's madness deepened, Charlotte found herself not just a mother to 15 children, but essentially a single parent managing a royal household. During one of Britain's most turbulent periods, but Charlotte's fertility came at a price. That would echo through British history. Several of her children would inherit their father's mental instability, and her constant pregnancies left her own health permanently compromised. Empress Maria Theresa of Austria, 1717 to 1780, at number 6. We encounter Empress Maria Theresa of Austria, who managed to birth 16 children while simultaneously ruling one of Europe's most powerful empires. But the truly disturbing part? She used her children as political pawns, arranging marriages that would shape European politics for generations. Maria Theresa inherited the Austrian throne at 23 and immediately faced multiple wars challenging her right to rule. While fighting for her empire's survival, she was also fighting a more personal battle, producing enough heirs to secure her dynasty. Between 1737 and 1756, she gave birth to 16 children, including the future Marie Antoinette, who would meet her fate at the guillotine during the French Revolution. The Empress orchestrated her pregnancies with military precision, timing births to avoid critical political moments when possible. She would often conduct state business from her birthing chamber, signing treaties and making crucial decisions while in labor. Her fertility became a weapon of diplomacy. Each child represented a potential alliance, a marriage that could secure peace or forge new political bonds. Yet the human cost was devastating. Maria Theresa's own writings reveal the physical and emotional toll of constant pregnancy. She described feeling like a breeding machine for the empire, her body belonging not to herself, but to the state. Of her 16 children, several died young, and she would outlive many of them, watching as her carefully planned political marriages crumbled into tragedy. Queen Anne of Great Britain, 1665 to 1714, coming in at number 5 is Queen Anne of Great Britain, whose story of fertility is perhaps the most heartbreaking on our list. Anne was pregnant at least 17 times, possibly 18, yet died childless, a cruel twist of fate that would haunt her entire reign. Anne's marriage to Prince George of Denmark in 1683 began what would become an endless cycle of hope and devastation. Her body seemed designed for pregnancy, conceiving easily and frequently, yet something was terribly wrong. Of her 17 confirmed pregnancies, only 5 children were born alive, and only one, Prince William, survived past infancy, and he died at age 11 from hydrocephalus. The medical details are disturbing. Anne suffered from what historians believe was antiphospholipid syndrome, a condition that causes blood clots and pregnancy complications. Her pregnancies often ended in miscarriages so late that fully formed babies were delivered dead. She endured stillbirths at 7, 8, even 9 months, holding dead infants who looked perfect but would never draw breath. Between pregnancies, men grew increasingly desperate and physically broken. She became obese, possibly from hormonal imbalances, and developed gout so severe she had to be carried in a sedan chair. Her body, designed for constant pregnancy, was destroying itself in the pursuit of an heir. When she finally died in 1714, she had spent over 20 years of her life pregnant, with nothing to show for it but grief and a succession crisis that would reshape British monarchy. Catherine de' Medici, 1519 to 1589. At number 4, we have Catherine de' Medici, Queen of France, who gave birth to 10 children and used her fertility to climb from a merchant family to become one of Europe's most powerful women. But her story takes a dark turn when we examine how she manipulated her own children's lives and deaths for political gain. Catherine's early years of marriage to the future Henry II were marked by a terrifying reality. She was barren for the first 11 years of marriage, facing constant threats of divorce and disgrace. In desperation, she reportedly consulted astrologers, physicians, and even practitioners of dark magic. Some accounts suggest she underwent bizarre and dangerous treatments, including drinking potions made from ground pearls and unicorn horns, and even more disturbing practices involving the blood of newborns. When she finally began bearing children in 1544, Catherine made up for lost time with a vengeance. She gave birth to 10 children over 12 years, including 4 future kings of France. But Catherine didn't just produce heirs, she wielded her fertility like a weapon, using her children as chess pieces in a deadly game of European politics. The disturbing truth is that Catherine may have orchestrated the deaths of some of her own children's spouses and rivals. As Queen Mother, she allegedly poisoned enemies, arranged assassinations, and even encouraged her daughter Margot's scandalous affairs to control political alliances. Her fertility had given her power, but that power corrupted her maternal instincts into something far more sinister. Eleanor of Aquitaine, 1122 to 1204, at number 3. We encounter Eleanor of Aquitaine, bore 10 children to 2 different kings, and used her fertility to control the fate of medieval Europe. But Eleanor's story reveals the brutal reality of how royal women's bodies were treated as political property. Passed from husband to husband like territorial assets, Eleanor first married Louis VII of France at age 15 and gave birth to 2 daughters. But when she failed to produce a male heir after 15 years of marriage, the church annulled their union, essentially declaring her children illegitimate. Within 2 months, she married Henry II of England, who was 11 years her junior, and immediately began producing the heirs that would shape English history. Over the next 13 years, Eleanor gave birth to 8 more children, including the future Richard the Lionheart and King John. But here's where her story becomes truly disturbing. Eleanor was essentially a royal broodmare, her pregnancies timed to political necessity rather than personal choice. She spent most of her 30s either pregnant or nursing, her body never her own. When Eleanor finally rebelled against Henry II, supporting her sons in a revolt against their father, Henry's punishment was swift and brutal. He imprisoned her for 16 years, from age 50 to 66 the years, when she should have been enjoying her freedom from constant pregnancy. Eleanor's fertility had made her powerful, but it had also made her a prisoner of her own success. Anne of Cleves, 1515 to 1557, at number 2. Now we have a shocking revelation about Anne of Cleves, Henry VIII's fourth wife, whose story has been completely misunderstood by history. Recent evidence suggests Anne may have been pregnant when Henry annulled their marriage. And what happened next reveals one of the most disturbing cover-ups in royal history. Traditional history tells us that Anne of Cleves was the lucky wife who survived Henry VIII because their marriage was never consummated. Court records and contemporary accounts paint a very different picture. Anne was described as having a full figure when she arrived at court, and several courtiers noted her apparent pregnancy symptoms during the brief 6 months of her marriage. Here's where the story becomes truly chilling. When Henry decided to annul the marriage, Anne just Agriche was reportedly threatened with treason charges unless she signed documents stating the marriage was never consummated. But if she was pregnant, what happened to the child? Some historians believe Anne gave birth in secret at Richmond Palace, and the infant was either killed or spirited away to protect Henry's reputation. Anne's later life supports this theory. She received an enormous settlement from Henry, more than any of his other divorced wives. Anne lived in luxury for the rest of her life. But she never remarried and was said to suffer from periods of deep melancholy. Court physicians' records show treatments for women's complaints that match postpartum depression. Anne of Cleves may have been not just a survivor, but a woman forced to give up her child to save her life. Cleopatra, 769 to 30 BCE, and number 1. We have Cleopatra, 7 of Egypt. His fertility was so politically powerful that it nearly changed the course of Western civilization. But the truth about Cleopatra's reproductive life is far more shocking than Hollywood has ever dared to portray. Cleopatra gave birth to 4 children by 3 different Roman leaders: Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, and possibly Pompey the Great. But here's what makes her story truly extraordinary. She used her pregnancies as weapons of war, timing her births to coincide with military campaigns and political negotiations. When she arrived to meet Julius Caesar, she was already pregnant with his child. Using her condition to secure his protection and Egypt's independence, the disturbing reality is that Cleopatra's body became a battlefield for the future of the Roman Empire. Her son with Caesar, Caesarion, was declared Caesar's heir, threatening Octavian's claim to power. Her twins with Mark Antony were named Alexander, Helios, and Cleopatra. Selena the sun and Moonin, a deliberate challenge to Roman authority. She was literally breeding a new dynasty designed to overthrow Roman rule. But the most chilling aspect of Cleopatra's story is what happened to her children. When she and Antony were defeated at the Battle of Actium, Cleopatra made the ultimate sacrifice. Rather than let her children be paraded through Rome as prisoners, she reportedly gave them poison hidden in her jewelry. Only her daughter Cleopatra Selene survived, and she was forced to watch her brothers die before being taken as a slave to Rome. Cleopatra's fertility wasn't just about producing heirs, it was about creating a genetic legacy that would challenge the Roman Empire itself. Her final act wasn't suicide from despair, but a mother's desperate attempt to spare her children from becoming symbols of Roman conquest. Conclusion: from the palaces of Versailles to the tombs of ancient Egypt, from the castles of medieval England to the courts of the Holy Roman Empire, these queens transformed their bodies into instruments of political power. Their stories remind us that behind every crown lies a human being, and behind every heir lies a mother who risked everything to secure her dynasty's future. These women didn't just rule kingdoms, they populated them, one birth at a time, often paying the ultimate price for their fertility. Their lives reveal how history is shaped not just by wars and politics, but by the most intimate and dangerous act a woman can perform: giving birth. What do you think were these queens heroes who secured their dynasties, or victims of a system that valued them only for their ability to produce heirs? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more shocking stories from history's most fascinating figures.